we will start the recording of the session. Perfect. Now, another thing that we need is a rapporteur of our group. So is there anyone who wants to do it as a volunteer?
I don't mind doing it, but if somebody else would rather do it, I'd like somebody else to do it.
It seems as an offer, Alistair, and so thank you very much. Of course, no problem, because it will be just to sum up a little bit what we discussed today. So we, well, first of all, I'm Paolo and Raffaele from Materahub. We are part of EntreComp Europe project. We wanted to share with you a little experience that we managed as part of the EntreComp Europe, and in a more widely way as part of our work with EntreComp, related on how we worked in order to build the Italian community of EntreComp users. And we think that this can be really an example of a possible way to work together with maybe a geographical community, like a national or regional community of users of EntreComp. At the same time, also a way to approach a sectorial community of potential EntreComp users. So, of course, we have a presentation here, but what we would like to do is to try and make this as interactive as possible. So what I invite you to do is, at any time, feel free to interrupt me and to add your own experience. If you have any question about what we did, if you have any suggestion or things that you have an experience on, or things like that, please feel free to contribute. So let's start. Okay, so as you probably heard, inside the EntreComp Europe project, one of the main activities that we have been called to realize is to create these national or regional communities in the partners countries. And of course, these national communities will then start to work and trying to develop joint projects, joint initiatives in 4 specific areas, which can be considered like pillars for our project, which refer to youth work, general education, and more specifically employment and enterprise. And of course, the common element for these communities to work together is the EntreComp framework as a common reference to develop activities. Now, we decided to start very soon with building the Italian community of EntreComp, which is called EntreComp Italy, very easily. What we decided to do was to start from 2 main approaches, let's say. From one side, of course, we wanted to try and map the people that were somehow, that we already knew as part of a group of users that were interested in EntreComp, that were working on entrepreneurship education, that have developed projects previously, that were like just curious about the framework. But at the same time, we immediately wanted to hook them and to connect them to the common work that we were doing by offering them immediately some very simple but very effective tools for them to either reflect on the work that they were doing, or improve the work that they were doing, or simply open possibility for further cooperation. And so First of all, we made an initial reflection that was somehow based on making a clear difference between the people that were working in business education and the people that were focused on entrepreneurial competencies development. And probably in your work and in your daily activities related to trying to apply EntreComp into your work, your educational path, and similar, you have experienced this potential difference that makes a little bit easier, of course, to explore the world of those who are interested in promote entrepreneurial competencies among very different sectors, among very different targets, and so potentially have more interest into exploring the application of EntreComp. And that's what really happened to us as well. So here, and I hope that the images here will not disturb the view. What we tried to do was to make an initial reflection on the different levels of EntreComp. Thanks, Raffaele. Yeah, this should work. Trying to understand, according to the different levels that you can have in EntreComp, we tried to think about potential groups of users and interested organization or people whose, let's say, use of the framework would fit into one of these, let's say, 4 specific areas. Unfortunately, it is in Italian, but don't worry, we will try to make it soon available also in English. Here, the important thing is that you can clearly see that on the left side, there are people that are somehow related to what we considered an application of EntreComp at the basic and intermediary level. And in these 2 groups, we have the group of teachers and educators, and at the same time, the group of, as intermediaries, the group of facilitators, trainers, coaches, and mentors. And while the first belong to the world of education, so normally we refer to people in schools or universities, the second one belong to the new spaces for entrepreneurship development, from our experience here in Italy, creative hubs, business incubators, and co-working spaces. On the right side, so for the level which we consider as advanced and expert, you have people like business mentored, consultant organization advisors, or in the expert level, expert entrepreneurs. And we have to admit, and this is somehow connected to what in our previous webinar we were discussing with Margherita, we are trying to work and focus on the left side of this picture. So we are trying to work and build our community with teachers and educators. We are trying to work with the trainers and the mentors of creative hubs, co-working spaces, and incubators. While the work in the right side, so the work with those who are involving business at a more developed stage, seems to be more difficult. Because if you remember, Margherita was saying that usually there is this reluctancy on the world of business to cooperate directly with the world of entrepreneurship education. And this is something that might be a very interesting way to explore how to further develop a community. So for now, the experience that we have in the Italian community was mainly focused on the first 2 levels and on the use that these 2 big groups made of the EntreComp framework. Okay. So another important element that we had in our activity was a mapping exercise. Because after assuming that we could have found a better ground for cooperation and interest into those two groups that we saw before, thanks to another European project called EntreComp 360, we launched some times ago a survey which was aiming to really understand, not only in Italy, but in several European countries, how people, organizations, professionals have been using EntreComp, trying to map EntreComp in use. So we were looking for tools, we were looking for reports, we were looking for training courses, we were looking for nice stories around the use and application of EntreComp. And of course, this contributed a lot, because we got not only a list of people that told us that they knew EntreComp, but immediately we were aware of a group of people in Italy that were interested in being part of a community of users, community of practice, that was somehow ready to share tools, share experiences, build new projects, and very important, very looking forward to share this experience with the other European communities that we were trying to build in the project. So the next step was to immediately provide something to the users. So not only offering them the idea of being part of a common group, sharing similar interests, sharing maybe a similar approach or view towards the importance of entrepreneurship education, but also to give them some very practical tools to start using in their daily work. So what we tried to do was to, first of all, give them a very simple and easy to use self-assessment tool. This self-assessment tool was developed trying to refer to the 4 levels of EntreComp that we saw before. And this was somehow built on a way that by having people filling this self-assessment tool, the facilitators, the trainers, the teachers could immediately understand specific training needs of the users. So far, at least in Italy, we had never had such a tool connected to EntreComp, and we never had the possibility to really understand where people were in terms of the different levels that EntreComp propose, and where people needs were and what they were. So this was a very simple tool. As you can see, the form is in Google Doc form, but the community, the Italian community, found it very, very interesting, because it was really giving an answer to a very basic need that the community had, and that until that moment in Italian, it was not yet available. The next thing was a guide, a very simple guide where we proposed our view to present and use and develop EntreComp related activities and training. So now Raffaele will show you directly the guide. Okay, of course it is in Italian, but we made it very very visual and simple, in a way that it could be very easily translated into other languages. And of course, it is somehow closely linked to the official documents developed by JRC and ready for the European EntreComp user community. So it was really a way to present the EntreComp framework, the potential use, the progression level system, and at the same time, we were connecting this guide together with other tools that the Italian community could use, and that we had somehow started to relate. So nothing new, because some of these elements you probably already saw in the official documents, but a little work of contextualization, which was probably something needed by every national community or sectoral community to make EntreComp really be ready to answer the needs of a given group of users.
Just to add an information, the idea of this small guide is also to show to the teacher, educator, which is the complexity under the EntreComp, because EntreComp is not only a flower with 15 competencies, but for each competencies we have more or less 3 or 4 threads who are really, really important to understand. For example, how I can create my training pathway for my students or for my participant in a freelancer or entrepreneurial courses in a co-working space. So the idea is to explain in more detail and to go deeper inside of the flower, and also to help these people to understand how they can use this kind of sub competencies to create in more detailing situation their pathway.
So the next step connected to this was to somehow connect EntreComp and the competencies of EntreComp to a canvas, so a very visual instrument to build a training pathway. And of course, this is like an initial step of the work, the ambitious work that we would like to do. But that is, as you can imagine, can have potentially a lot of application, because out of every single EntreComp competence, you can potentially develop a specific training course, and a training course specifically for a given age, sector, educational level. So with the training design canvas, what we did was to try and make it visual and simple, a set of suggestions developed in areas where we were like giving to coach, to trainers, to facilitators, to mentors, specifically in the vet area, or in again, creative hubs, co-working spaces that are normally the spaces where we as Materahub had the majority of interaction with people interested in developing entrepreneurial competencies, mainly because that's where our specific community or sectorial community is. And so by looking at this very simple document, we were trying to give them from one side, give them a guide, a practical guide, a simplified guide, but from the other side, we were starting a path where potentially there is the possibility to develop competence-specific training out of every single competence and sub-competence of EntreComp.
This is a more generic approach, because we know perfectly which is our target about the users of EntreComp, especially in first and second level of users. So trainers, teachers, for sure, educators. So we know their needs, especially in this moment, a pathway like this, a canvas like this, because they need to create in more effective way the innovative didactic pathway. So this is more generic. But with Ellen, our colleague in EntreComp Europe and in another project, we are creating in this week another tools, and I think we will have the final version in a few weeks, the name, it will be EntreComp Lab Design Canvas. The idea of EntreComp Lab is more specific of EntreComp. It's a more specific way to guide these people, especially educator and facilitator and teachers, to create their personal pathway and training pathway about EntreComp, and for sure with the goal to create the opportunity, to train the entrepreneurship competencies. So I hope in a few weeks we will send you the final version also about the EntreComp Lab Design Canvas.
So the trying to summing up while we talk, mapping the community was very important to understand who we had around us. Developing some very initial tools to be offered to the community was also very important, because it was like immediately giving an extra interest, or confirming the interest and showing that the community was an active space for them, so that in the community they could, from one side, find things, from the other also propose things, because the starting point of the training design canvas that we had came precisely from a question and from the need of some of the users of our community. So we were approached by people running a creative hub who asked us how to connect EntreComp to the training activities that they were doing for their startups and for potential new entrepreneurs that they were working with. So this mutual interaction was also very important. Then another important thing is, of course, and this is probably also connected to the topic that colleagues are discussing in another group, and it's creating a space for the community. And for us, of course, the very first step was building a website for EntreComp Italia. At the same time, we were discussing at the beginning what could have been the best way to keep the community connected. And for now, and of course this seems to work quite well, the best solution that we found, not having of course any kind of other platform developed, is to use Facebook groups. Why Facebook groups? And colleagues from EntreComp Europe know, because we have been discussing about this quite a lot. Well, actually, Facebook group gives the possibility, first of all, to interact personally. So all the people in the group can share things, can write their idea, can promote what they are doing, their work. At the same time, as you know, by working in European projects, almost all European projects have Facebook page. But Facebook page tend to be just a window to show the work of the project. There is no interaction, while the Facebook group gives the possibility also for the people that are running Facebook page to write in the group. So you can write as a person, you can write as a Facebook page, so as a project. And at the same time, it gives really this idea of exchange that other social network, even those who might have a more professional level of discussion, like LinkedIn, tend not to offer to the audience. So, of course, this is something that we are exploring. Another important thing that we wanted to share with the community, and this is again connected with the incredible work that at least in the last 5 years, a lot of organizations have been doing in the framework of European cooperation, is to host in our website open educational resources. So as you know, particularly with the Erasmus Plus program, the philosophy behind the production of contents has been the one of developing content to be fully and freely accessible to everyone. So a lot of projects have been working in developing open educational resources. And with the open educational resources, the good thing is that you can host them, you can share them, you can promote them. And this is potentially creating opportunities for, yeah, we have a question.
Yes, sorry, Raffaele, just a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned before that you perform a survey to better understand, to map, I mean, the community. What were the outcomes? I mean, at the end, I mean, how many people are interested in using EntreComp? If yes, who they are? I mean, educators, coaches, mentors, who?
So the final report and results of the survey will be published very soon. From the numbers that we got, I think we really got a lot of answers, and not only from Europe. So it was around 300 answers that we got. Also from a community of practice that was coming from other countries like China, for example, where some colleagues from UK have been running workshops to use EntreComp also there. We found some interesting practices, and we have to say that they were really, really transversal. We found projects that have used EntreComp within the agricultural sector, projects that have been using EntreComp to train community operators working with young people, even projects like the one that we are running with the parents, promoting for parents the higher awareness of their role in promoting entrepreneurship among their children. Of course, because we were mapping and collecting the reports, studies, there are also different levels. So, for example, from academia, we have been collecting analysis and research from, let's say, a more scientific point of view. While other organizations that were using EntreComp more into practice, they were really using it in formal education, informal and non-formal. So the interesting thing is that there is a very big community in Europe, and not only in Europe. And even more interesting, what we discovered by mapping through the database of Erasmus Plus approved project is that the datum that out of, I don't remember how many projects that were using the keywords entrepreneurship education or entrepreneurial competencies, only 30%, and we were talking about some 700 European projects in 6 years, were making a clear reference to EntreComp. So potentially we have a community of a big community of people that are working in entrepreneurship education, but that they still don't know EntreComp. Okay. Which is also part of the mission that we want to have as a community, not only to work with the one that know the framework and that they are already using it, but trying to reach as many people that can be potentially interested in EntreComp and using EntreComp and apply EntreComp to their practices, life and activities, but they do not know it yet.
Three important things to close this first part of the meeting. One is today the goal is to sharing with you our strategy, our not only from EntreComp Italy, but in general from EntreComp Europe, all the partnership of EntreComp. The strategy is to create this community, national or regional community, to involve people to understand better the difference from entrepreneurship or business education and entrepreneurship competencies training is very, very different, not only in the schools ecosystem, but also in other kind of ecosystem. Paolo mentioned before creative hubs, co-working space, and so on, because this is important. Another part of the strategy is also to has two different kind of goals, final goals. From one side, you show in this slide, in the next step, we will go directly in an ecosystem, existing innovative educational pathway, to introduce them the importance of EntreComp, and maybe to put in their already existing training a sort of EntreComp label. For example, in Italy, we have a big community starting from the Ministry of the Education. The name is Educative Avant-Garde. As a very useful network with all schools, first and secondary level, who work with the different kind of educational methodology, debate, reverse classroom, and so on. They don't know who they use EntreComp. They don't know who their finally objective of the training path are also in very relationship with the entrepreneurial competencies. And our goal is to show them who there is a flower very important for them. And thanks to this flower, they can evaluate in more better way, for example, the results of the efficiency of the training pathway. This is the first goal for the next step in a few months, I hope, because we have already connected Materahub and the EntreComp Europe project with the government, with the national level, the ministry. In a second part, we need to create this EntreComp lab, because we hope all people, especially educators or teachers in the school, but imagine in the co-working space, in the incubator, if people, or for example, especially in that situation, a lot of trainers and a lot of educators needs EntreComp to understand how they can introduce the EntreComp's competence, the entrepreneurial competencies in their training pathway. Sometimes we find in this moment in the existing training pathway only 3, 4, 5, 6 maximum competence, entrepreneurial competencies, or we know thanks to EntreComp. But in general, we hope to show them how many other competencies are important. Understand this, competencies and sub-competencies. This is our goal in this moment. This is just not to collect people in our community, but to disseminate the importance of the entrepreneurial competencies using EntreComp. Also because we can evaluate in more better way the entrepreneurial competencies and also the training pathway using the EntreComp levels, the sub-competencies, the threads, the learning outcome. This is the treasure of the EntreComp in general, of the framework.
And of course, the approach that we try to have has been, well, first of all, probably it was easier for us to activate all this work because by being a private organization, we could act quite fast into putting in place some activities. So we didn't have really to probably follow the same steps that some more structured organization or a public organization had to do. The other thing very important is that our approach is very bottom-up. and it's like really trying to build this practice first, collect this practice first, and then start a dialogue with, let's say, the more institutional level or government, which probably will be our big challenge in order to give to the work that we have been doing a kind of wider, higher level recognition. And then the other thing, and in this, the EntreComp Europe project will also make some experiment, is that for now we have been focusing on recognizing a national community and recognizing common needs of this community and common interests of this community. But then we will have to start focusing more specifically on the sectors or the specific interest of the people in this community, so that potentially the community can create some subgroups, and in each subgroups there might be specific area of development of activities. So there might be a group working with youth, there might be a group working with EntreComp applied to employees of companies, there might be something related to a specific target, like, I don't know, working with migrants, there might be something about creative industries, there might be something about students from universities, children from school. So really the potential of generating new communities inside the community, it's very high. And we think that when you start to do these first activities, and you start to understand where the people are, and then you start together with this first core group to let other people become aware that even if they didn't recognize that some of the work that they were doing was somehow potentially in connection with EntreComp, then you know, they can immediately understand it and start to become interested in the work that you have done. So yeah.
To ask a couple of questions. How long do we have left?
I think we have some 15 minutes or 12 minutes.
Excuse me, Paolo. Yeah. I have raised my hand. I don't know, before you change of the slide. I'm Carmen from Spain.
Hi, Carmen.
Hi, how are you? Could you please keep that slide? Thank you. So I would like just to ask you about the survey and the work you are carrying on with them, because I guess that you are focusing on the competencies at level 1, from 1 to 4. Is it good, or you have for the survey? I'm talking about the target group of the survey, the people that have received the survey. Are you covering all the competencies level or not? Only the teachers, educators, facilitators, trainers, and you are focusing on those levels?
We were actually, we were asking with the survey where the people felt they were compared to these 8 levels. And then what we realized was that the majority of the people we had connection with, or that we could reach, belong to the first 4 groups. And of course, this is somehow confirmed something that we already knew, and that is something that I think also at JRC they are aware of, and that all the world of, let's say, business education, so those who are like really connected to what could be advanced and expert level, they tend not to really connect themselves with EntreComp. While for us it is very easy to work with the first 4 levels, and so forth, with the red and green groups, because there is a different attitude towards that.
Yes, because since we are working, I'm working, as you know, in the Spain chamber.
Yeah.
For us, most of our users belong to either starting SMEs, I mean entrepreneurs, but not just from a theoretical point of view, but on a practice and after having designed a business plan. And on the other hand, from people that want to sustain their SME. I mean, for the time being, under, for instance, this period of crisis, economic crisis, small entrepreneurs and small companies that come to the chamber to get some new training to reinforce their business project. So, what's your view, your opinion, as you have already tried and with EntreComp, in order to reinforce not so this academic approach of EntreComp, but moving EntreComp into a more practical people that want to reinforce, strengthen this business, not project, but their business reality, the SMEs. Thank you.
Yeah, I show you our last thing, our last idea. We are working to realize this. We have produced with Materahub in another project a customization of the famous business model canvas. No, our is creative project canvas. It's more in relationship with freelance or people who work in creative and cultural field. No. For example, we have connected the creative project canvas. You can connect also the business model canvas with the competencies coming from the flower of EntreComp.
Yeah,
it's interesting because there are really, really clear correspondence, clear link for any block of the canvas, also with the business model canvas, and the EntreComp competencies. And the idea for first and second or third level, and also level 4, about the level of EntreComp, is already also the people who use the business model canvas, for example, in a non-formal pathway training, they are trained their entrepreneurial competencies. This is really important to understand and to show to the trainer and facilitator, because they can go deeper inside of this kind of exercises, because they can create their training pathway using business model canvas or our credit project canvas in more better way. Understand this. This is a really practically way to introduce EntreComp also in an already existing situation, tools and so on.
I think, Carmen, related to what you were saying, so related to existing business, probably, but this is of course something that it's, well, first of all, to explore directly by asking the entrepreneurs and the people that are working in companies, but something that probably the current situation might ask is a more entrepreneurial attitude into the employees of companies. So even if they are not entrepreneurs, and they are working for a company, their attitude should probably going towards being more entrepreneurial. So for already existing companies, by training their employees in entrepreneurial competencies and an entrepreneurial attitude, that might result in something like having a stronger company at the end to overcome or to be resilient to the current situation. Of course, it's hard to say because, as I was saying before, we have had a lot of experience from the first 2 levels, but we lack to explore the advanced and expert.
From 5 to 8.
Alistair, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just a couple of questions because we're sort of short on time. Just how many companies have been trained with this process?
You mean the creative project canvas?
Yeah. Or
the one that we're using? Well,
the EntreComp, well, whichever one you want, either the EntreComp Lab Design Canvas or the earlier, whatever the first one was called.
So the original one, we tested it with over 1,000 cultural and creative operators because that was the area where we worked. But with the new one, we are going to start. We are going to have this week a first use of that with young migrant entrepreneurs for another European project. We have been somehow, the idea of some of these tools were coming from training that happened in the framework of the EntreComp for Educators project, where in different countries of Europe, teachers and educators from different levels were trained at the use of EntreComp and the application of EntreComp. And then, well, the community, the Italian community now has some 70 people and a little less organization. The idea is that we want to now make it practical. So before the, let's say, the current situation happened, our objective was to try and organize some labs. We had 2 online activities, training activities. One was for the representatives and managers of regional creative hubs that are in Apulia region, and with them we try to work on how to connect EntreComp with their work and training specifically for startups, but it's like the number are still in a pilot phase, so very limited.
Okay, so tell me about the 1,000 cultural operators. You tell me, so how much of this training has been going on? Did you say 1,000 cultural operators?
Yeah, we have 1 minute left. So these 1,000 people have been trained during a longer time. So
have been trained.
Yeah, they have been trained. Yeah. We started in 2000.
That's okay. That's what I just want that number. How long does an EntreComp Lab Design Canvas course last? How many sessions?
It's not in terms of section, but it's in terms of tool to
typically
guide you to help you to create your customizing pathway, because our idea is not to create a training pathway, but to create tools to help.
Thank you. Outside of Italy, how many countries outside of Europe and China?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hi, I am Carmen. Hello.
Hi.
Hello, it's Paolo and Raffaele.
Hi.
Hello.
Stop recording.
Stop recording.
Okay. Madeline, do you know how it works now that we are in the common rooms? Do we stop recording? Yes.
Yes. Okay.